we never argue. We haven't had an argument for 7 years. I'm really worried about that couple.
Why is it concerning if couples don't have conflict?
When there's no conflict, it means you are holding things in, able to be honest with your partner. It means that there could be built up resentment. So then they're just pulling away and they're probably finding other ways to get needs met. It leads to the relationship slowly dying.
That's such a powerful conversation because I know this firsthand. Guys, I am so excited for you to hear this conversation because I get to talk to my friend, Dr. Morgan Anderson. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I am excited for you to be here too because, oh my gosh, the conflict that comes up when couples talk about money and relationship problems, right? And as you know, we're in alignment on this. I know because we've had these private conversations that there's a lot of challenges around money and relationships. That isn't it the stat like 70% of most relationships, that's their number one issue is money. So I thought, why not bring on an expert that knows how to deal with conflict, that can maybe give us some frameworks and parameters on how to better talk about money with our partners. So is that something you can help us with? Like, what's one thing we can start with to have a better conversation about money or just conflicts in general with our partners?
Yeah. Ooh. So I love this already. This is going to be so good. I think first off, I just want people to change their relationship with conflict. As a couple psychologist for years, what I notice is the couples that I'm actually really worried about are the couples that aren't having any conflict at all. So we have to change our relationship with conflict and say, okay, conflict actually means that we're close. Conflict is good. Conflict means that there's honesty. So we got to change our relationship with conflict first. And then once we accept it and know that it's good, let's change how we go about it so that we can have healthy conflict with our partners.
So let's back up because I know everyone's probably wondering what I am. Why is it concerning if couples don't have conflict?
So when there's no conflict, it means that you are holding things in. You're not able to be honest with your partner. And a lot of times it means that there could be built up resentment and that there's distance. So resentment and distance and pulling away from your partners, this is how relationships die. You know,
so
like
true.
when I see the couple that says, oh, we never argue. We haven't had an argument for 7 years. I'm really worried about that couple. They've really
because you
grown
think
apart.
No matter what, right? Like with your experience, there's going to be some issues and then they're just not addressing them.
Right. They're not addressing it. They're not being honest. So then they're just pulling away and they're probably finding other ways to get needs met. And it leads to the relationship slowly dying.
Wow. That's such a powerful conversation because I know this firsthand because I don't like conflict. Like I just don't like, even though I'm one to like hit a challenge head on, I also just don't like, I think it's an energy suck. I don't like to talk about it. So I would much rather change my view of something than change it, right? Because we can either change our view or change it. So I would rather just change my view about something. But what I realize is that I almost like give myself away in the process. And I'm just being really vulnerable. I don't normally talk about this kind of stuff on the show, but just honestly speaking, that tends to happen, right? It's like, I feel like I give myself away a little bit and I'm like, okay with the situation until all of a sudden I'm not. Maybe someone listening can feel the same thing. Is there something that we can do beforehand in order to be like, wait, this is me giving myself away a little bit. Let's talk about it in a healthy way.
So good. So good. I love that you're being vulnerable. I love it.
I wouldn't, it's because it's you. I wouldn't be doing this with anybody else. But this is so true. Like, and it's a reoccurring theme that quite honestly, I probably haven't fully healed yet. I'm doing better. We're all a work in progress process.
Sure.
But it's definitely something that I've noticed.
Yeah.
That because I don't like conflict to be honest.
Absolutely. So I think what's really key is changing how you go about conflict. So we talked about the first part. You change your relationship with conflict. You say, okay, this is good. I want us to say conflict allows me to grow with my partner, right? Like conflict allows us to grow together. And it allows me to be my true self because I'm honoring myself. And you have to realize this truth. The relationships that are sustainable, that last a long time, are where two individuals are really honest about who they
Mm.
are and what they want. So when you're being honest about your needs, you're saying, I value this relationship and I want it to last a long time because it's only going to last if I'm my true self.
So true. Is there a way that couples can work through it to have like, because it's sometimes hard to come up with the conversation?
Yeah, I have a framework and I love this. And
Cool.
I know
Share.
you are all about this because you love the actionable advice. So
That's right.
I've got you covered. I've got you covered. This is called dialogue. And it's a framework that I've given to so many couples. This has saved marriages. This is really, really helpful stuff. Um, Essentially, you have a sender and a receiver. So you have the couple, there's two roles, the sender and the receiver. The sender is the person who's sharing what they're feeling and maybe what the conflict is. So, an example is I feel alone in our finances. I feel like
Mm.
all the weight is on me. I feel alone. So, the sender's using I statements. The
So that it's not
receiver,
you, right? So it's not
right?
putting it on. Okay, got it.
So taking ownership, we know how important that is. Taking ownership of I feel this, right? When this happens, I feel this.
Mm-hmm.
And then the receiver, this is the beautiful thing. Their only job is to make sure that the sender feels heard.
Mm.
So all they can't say, but this, but that. They can't get defensive. They're simply repeating back. I heard what you said is you feel alone and you feel like the burden of finances is all on you.
Mm-hmm.
They're just
So,
repeating
wow.
back.
And what happens? So that's the receiver's job. What happens
Yeah.
when the sender isn't giving you, to your opinion, accurate information?
It's important to say that we have that framework where there's the sender receiver.
Mm-hmm.
The next step, step two of this, you
Oh, okay.
switch roles. You switch
Ah,
roles.
okay.
So you do get to say, I feel like I am showing up and I'm trying to have conversations. I feel blocked out by you, as an example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So each person is sharing their experience and each person is getting validated.
And then you just do it till you run out of words, or what's what's the?
Usually, and I should add this. It's so fun. You have couples sit across from each other and they're holding hands and they're looking at each other. So it's
Okay.
like, kind of like you and I right now, like you're
Yeah.
really connected and you're getting that validation. And then step three, this is where most couples start with.
Okay.
Step three is how do we problem solve?
Hmm.
What does this look like going forward? What do we each need to feel better supported?
Is that the third and final, or is there one more?
Yes, that's it.
That's it. So then you problem solve. Okay. And where do you think couples get it messed up the most? Like, is it just by going there and it's not doing the sender receivers? Because obviously, as an expert, you're working with not just people in relationships, but people that are not in relationships but want to be in them. So is it mainly like everybody says it's communication? Do you really think that's what it is? Is it the communications that cause most people's problems or lack thereof?
You'll love this. Communication is a skill. Anybody can use a skill. What is the real true core issue in my opinion is belief systems and self-worth.
Mm.
Because we can teach people how to communicate assertively, but if they haven't done the healing work on themselves and they know, hey, I am enough, I am worthy of love, I don't have to earn people's love, the belief systems really impacts a person's ability to communicate.
That's interesting. So
So
it's
you
like you
need
got to
both.
do the inner work, right? So when someone, like maybe someone listening now that's not in a relationship, right? So if they're in one, this was great, tangible, as you know. I love the action, like do this, then do this, then do this. So they can go and they can start these resenders and the receiver. And the reason I think this is so important is because like if we're not happy in our relationships, in our intimate relationships, it is really hard to focus on all the other things that you need to do in a business and to build wealth and to have great health, because there's always, even if it's unsaid, there's this like drain or this weight that's always on your shoulders about it. And so I think it's important to have this conversation in money because it is a big topic, but also so that people can get to the root of an issue to become more successful in whatever that they're looking to do. So this is a great conversation for people in relationships. what about those that aren't, but maybe they want to be in one, right? Like I talk to a lot of friends, they're like, find me a guy, or a lot of guys, find me one of your friends. And it's like, I don't ever know what to say to that. But at the same point, like, how can you become a love magnet, if you will, like the name of your book?
So, and I love, what you were saying to your point. Warren Buffett, when he was interviewed, when he was asked for his best life advice, he said, marry well. Like,
Mm,
be very careful about who you marry. And you talk about this too. Because,
yeah.
yeah, it is that person that you bring in is going to impact how you show up in all areas of your life. And just like myself as a clinical psychologist, being a very successful woman, when I was in a relationship with a narcissist, that was a huge drain on
Oh,
me
yeah.
and it impacted how I showed up. And then I know you know this too. It's like being with an emotionally available, secure partner makes every area of your life better.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, because I always say like it's the most expensive mistake. And people think I mean because of asset splitting and divorce but it's beyond that. It's what it holds you back from. It's what you don't feel confident enough to go do. It's kind of like the behind the
yes.
sheet, and you're trying to like forget that it's there and move on, and it's really hard to do that. So if someone's wanting to be in a better, is that inner work as well if they're wanting to be in a relationship?
What I want people to get really clear on, same as money is a multiplier, your partner is a multiplier for love. So if you are still outsourcing your self-worth, if you're looking for somebody to come in and fill the void for you and that's going to make you feel loved and make you feel good enough, your approach to dating, you're not going to be able to use discernment and you're not going to be able to make great relationship decisions because you're just trying to fill the void. So it
Mm,
is really important to do that inner work and create a strong, securely attached, because I love attachment theory. So a securely attached base where you have a great relationship with yourself and you know that you are loved and you have love in your life, and bringing in a partner is just going to multiply that love that you already have.
yeah. And you brought up attachment, which I definitely want because until we met, I hadn't heard. I mean, I knew that was like a theory, but I never heard it explained in a way that was like digestible. So explain that because I think a lot of times people are in relationships and they don't realize maybe that they're codependent or it's not as healthy as they might think it is. And there's a lot to be told about attachment styles. So can you break that down, what that means, and how we can use that in our relationships?
I always tell people attachment theory is the missing piece to the dating puzzle. And once you really understand it and apply it to your dating life, it will totally change your dating life.
All right, guys,
And
listen up. Everyone, listen up if you're dating.
everybody listening,
If you're on
stop
Tinder
trying.
or Bumble or all those places, you don't need that. You need attachment style. Let's hear it.
Stop asking Candy to be your matchmaker, okay?
I know.
Work on yourself. Um, so what I would want people to realize is understanding equals compassion. Compassion and understanding allows us to then change and learn how to show up differently. So attachment theory helps us understand ourselves so that we can change and become securely attached. Um, it's the science of why we do what we do in relationships. And essentially, it goes back to parent child relationships, what you learned early on in your life, and realizing that you're taking old ways of being into your adult life and repeating it.
Mm.
I can go into details with the styles if you would like.
Yeah, like how many are there?
There's four. I'll
4?
keep
Okay.
it. I'll give you
Yeah.
the spark notes.
Okay, perfect.
So yeah, four attachment styles. We have anxious attachment. Anxious attachment is classic where you are putting the relationship above yourself and you have fear of abandonment. And this is that person that needs a lot of reassurance. And no
Mm,
matter how much reassurance they get, they don't quite feel safe in the relationship. Like they're
mm.
always waiting for it to end or predicting how it's going to end.
Okay.
So
Is that
we all
typically
know this
because
person.
maybe they were abandoned or had something that some like a parent left them, whether intentionally or they passed away? So
Yeah.
they have that like security issue, if you will.
Yes. Yep.
And you know
Emotional
what?
neglect.
Anyone that's
Yeah.
listening, I always like to preface this, anytime we're talking about this, where you're self-evaluating, and you realize maybe like, oh my gosh, I might be this or I might be that. Like there is no wrong way to be. This is just helping understand who you are, because I think until we have self-awareness of who we are and what maybe certain circumstances in our life made us this way, we can't ever really fully change, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Obviously, I'm not an
No, it
expert
can
in this
be.
space, right? But until we
Totally.
fully understand it, we can't truly change into a more positive direction that we want in our life. So, no shame, no guilt. If you're like, "Oh my gosh, Dr. Morgan's saying this and that, yeah, this is who I am." That's okay. It's like just to help you understand who you are.
Yeah, it's just like what you always say. If you're like avoiding your debt, avoiding your credit cards, and just like living in shame, you can't do anything about it. So,
Right.
this is just getting everything out into the open, not so that we can judge it, but so that we can love it and give it compassion and understanding, and that we can allow ourselves to change. So, I'm so
Yeah.
glad you
Love
pointed
that.
that out.
Love that.
Um, the next style is avoidant attachment style. And this is where you are devaluing relationships and you develop hyper independence. So, this is where it's like, I'm focused on my career. I don't need anybody. I do everything myself. Maybe there's not that many people that are good enough for me out there. And this really does come from fear of depending on people and either being let down by someone else or thinking that I'm just not a good partner. So a lot of times it's
Mm.
beliefs that you're just not a good partner. And these people want connection, but they also really struggle when they're getting close. They tend to pull away. So this is the guy like maybe you went on a great date and then you don't hear from him for 2 weeks. Probably avoidant attachment.
Is this kind of like self-sabotage?
Yes, yeah. In that they want connection, but they're very uncomfortable with connection because there's that fear of I'm going to let this person down or they're
Mm-hmm.
going to let me down. So it
Mm-hmm.
feels more emotionally safe for them to be alone.
Interesting.
Yeah. And these people also oftentimes lack a relationship with themselves. Like they don't know what they're feeling. So then they really struggle to tune into other people's emotions.
So that's two. Is there a third?
Yeah. The next one is fearful avoidant or disorganized attachment, is what it's
Okay.
called clinically. And this is a mixture of anxious and avoidant. So this is like you take 2 steps forward in a relationship, 2 steps back, push, pull. Very confusing for anybody who's is in that situation where you want intimacy, you get closer, and then you pull away.
Hmm.
Um, and this is like, saying you love someone one day and then the next day, I want out of this relationship, right? In a very extreme example. Yeah.
And
And
are
then
there
we
a
have
lot of
secure.
people? Oh, secure. Is this the one everyone should want to be?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So this is what we're going towards, right? We all want
Yeah.
to lose and okay, get to secure.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. And just to answer your question, it's only about 5% of the population that
Okay.
is disorganized attachment. So it is a smaller
What is
number.
the larger number of the three?
Anxious attachment is about, like 25%.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Got it. So secure
Um,
attachment. That's what we're
secure.
rooting for.
Secure. So secure attachment is where you know that your needs matter and your partners matter. You value the relationship with yourself and you value a relationship with others. You can set boundaries. You can ask for what you need. You enjoy connection and you really value building lifelong relationships that get better with time. And you have self confidence, but you don't think that you're better than anybody. You're not like looking down on anyone. You just know that, yeah, I am a good partner and I have a lot that I can bring to a relationship. And dating is fun and relationships are fun.
That's good. So that's what and I think that it's important. Is it important to kind of like find out who you are first, like which one you might be in order to know where you need to get to?
Yeah, I would invite people if you're like, okay, which one am I? I do have a free quiz in my Instagram bio that will tell you the percentage of which style you are. So it's possible to be like 50% secure, 50% anxious.
Okay, got it.
So
And can those evolve? Like when you were talking about the second one, I was like, "Ooh, I think I was there at one point." What was the second one called? Where you're like
avoidant
hyper independent?
attachment.
What
Yeah.
is it?
Avoidant
Avoidant.
attachment style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that. I think I was like, "Oh wait, I think I was like that for because I think it's healing's a journey, right? Like sometimes you have to go through
Yeah.
things in order to really heal, and so." you can evolve, right? Because I don't think I'm like that now, but that was one way is people can find out this and they can make steps to get better.
I love that you're asking this because for a long time, attachment theory researchers said no. They said,
Oh,
you are what you are, and that's it. And I believe so strongly against that because of the evidence in my life and my clients' lives. So that was one of the missions behind my brand is that you can always move towards secure attachment. And
yeah.
now that is validated in the research. And
Mm.
there's this other school of thought that you and I are talking about, which we know to be true. You can
Oh my God.
always heal. You can
Well,
always learn new ways of being in relationship.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you think of the cells in our body, like every 6 months, our cells are new based off of whatever we were eating or around or what we put in our brain, like, what we've downloaded and consumed. So why couldn't that change too, right? As long as it's focused on.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned something that I think's important to circle back to. You mentioned boundaries. And I feel like this is one thing that people maybe lose in relationships. I don't know if lose is a good word. But I feel like in the beginning of a relationship, people will rationalize red flags. They'll fantasize about the potential of their partner. And I always say this is one of the worst things that you can do in the beginning of the conversation. I'd love to hear, or in the beginning of the relationship, I'd love to hear your take on it, even if you disagree. But I feel like it's the potential of the person and what we could build, and what, as opposed to seeing that person for who they are. And so, and I think by not having boundaries or expectations and trying to be open to that potential, that sometimes we get in relationships that aren't the best. Can you speak to maybe that? Is that a boundary issue? Is that the beginning of a relationship? Like, what can we do to avoid that in the future?
Such a good question. And I do think that we can get in that trap of not honoring ourselves and losing ourselves in relationships. And it can come from, I don't want to be abandoned. I want to be chosen. It's from those childhood wounds, you know? And I hate to say this, but I will, because I think people need to realize this. Sometimes you let go of your standards and you will date people that don't align with your standards just because it feels safe. There's something in your brain that says, ooh, I won't be abandoned by this person if I'm not matching up to my standards.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. I want to bang the table, but Sean, I'll mess up the audio. That was so good. I think you just nailed that, right? It's kind of like when you go with the safe person that maybe isn't to this is am I capturing that right? There was so much
Yeah.
value there. So anyone listening, stop and rewind and go listen to that again. It's like you go for something that's easy, that's safe. Because otherwise you got to do the work and be triggered to go for what your standards are. Is that kind of what I heard?
Totally. Yeah.
That's so good.
Yeah. So early on in a relationship, all the people I have the privilege of coaching, I talk about you have to be a love scientist. Like time to
Mm.
put your lab coat on. And I tell everybody we're doing reality testing. We are testing the reality of your experiences, who this person is. We have to put on that scientist hat in order to see like what's really going on here. Um, and part of it is, how do you feel when you're with this person? Do you feel heard? Do you feel seen? Do you feel understood? But then it's also the reality of, who is this person? Who am I? Do our values align? Is this where I want to be 10 years from now if I'm with this person? So I fully agree with you. We have to be in reality when we're
Mm-hmm.
dating.
Yeah. And so often, even if you get this right in the beginning, it can still be wrong. It can still go wrong, right? It can
Yeah,
still go sideways. And I don't know if this is an actual term. I always use the law of familiarity. It's like when you're more familiar with someone, it's like, their shininess goes away. You're more comfortable with them, which of course is good, but it can also have some bad sides. Like it seems like
ooh,
the people
yes,
that you're the closest with sometimes deal with the most crap. Is there a way that we
totally.
can keep that newness in a relationship and not go down that path of giving someone like our last our last versions of ourselves or the worst version of ourselves because they're familiar in the relationship?
Great question. And my favorite word of all time is intentional. And that's the word I think of here, is we have to make sure that we are intentionally filling up our cups and that we are overflowing and that we are showing up for our partner. And I always have people ask themselves this question: does this help my relationship grow? Does this make us a more securely attached couple? You want to take your actions, whatever you're going to say, you want to take it through that filter because
Hmm.
we're either growing or we're dying. So it's
Yeah.
that intentional, how can I bring my best? And does this really help us grow as a couple? And if it doesn't, maybe I need to go to the gym or I need to go on a walk or call up my therapist. Like you have to say what's meant for my relationship and what's meant for me or meant for somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's so good. And what are some of the things? So two things popped into my mind. A Tony Robbins quote: "If people only did at the end of the relationship the things that they did in the beginning, there would never be an end." Right? And so that's what made me
Yeah,
think of the intention that you mentioned. But like, what are some of the things that you find your clients can do for themselves? Because it sounds like, again, it kind of goes back to the self and the inner work. Like, what are some of the
absolutely.
things that they can do, maybe on like standards or consistently, whether it's daily, weekly, monthly, that maybe works to fill their cup up so that they have more for their partner?
And I love that we're talking about this because it is so common. I know you see this where people get unhappy with their lives, or maybe they're unhappy with their career, or maybe honestly, they don't love where their health is at and they're not feeling good just about
Hmm.
them. And oftentimes that will get projected onto the partner and they'll say, like, oh, something's wrong with my relationship. And they're expecting their partner to meet all their needs, right? So
Yeah.
I always think before we go saying, "Oh, something's wrong with my partner," we have to take a look in the mirror and say, "My joy is my job." That's one of my favorite quotes. "My joy is my
Oh, I
job."
love that.
And to answer your question, I have developed different practices that I teach all my clients. One of them is called the morning alignment practice. I'm sure you have
Oh,
something like this, but
yes. I'm curious to hear what yours is, though.
okay, so mine is a document that I check in with every morning, and it has a vision map. So it has a statement about my life and where my life is headed. It has affirmations, of course. It has pictures showing like what I want to create in my life, and then there's rules. There's rules that change based on what season I'm in. But the rules could be: you will read an hour every night. You will move your body for 30 minutes a day. You will call 5 friends this week, right? So I'm making sure that I'm honoring my rules and showing up for myself. And I'm connecting to that document every morning so that I stay on track.
Oh, that's so good. I love that. And is that something that your partner could also do or you could do together? Or is it more of just a self thing?
So you definitely can do that with your partner. I've had clients do that. My partner and I have done it together. And I think it's helpful to then co-create a relationship vision map, right? Which is
Yeah.
so fun where you're saying like, hey, these are the things that are important to us. And this is what it looks like in practice when our relationship is thriving. Like
Hmm.
operationalize, what does it look like? Because you can
Yeah.
say, oh, we want a great relationship. We want intimacy. What do the behaviors look like? What do your vacations look like? You have to operationalize it.
And it's like being intentional, kind of comes back to what you said, right? No, in no other area, our health, our business, our like nothing is going to prosper and do well if we're not intentional about the design. And I think that's why a lot of times when love is involved, people tend to get it wrong, including me. Like I've gotten it wrong in the past. It's like you think just because there's love that everything else will take care of itself. But there's so many other elements to having a great relationship. It's like you can't just drink a lot of water and not work out and not eat healthy and have a healthy body, right? So it takes all different things and components. You got to sleep, you got to do all sorts of things. So I think with relationships, it's like other than just having that feeling of love, we know that love is actually a verb. Are there some things that maybe in your practice you've explained and helped clients and patients like these are ways like because some fundamental ways to express it in a relationship so that it's felt at a deeper level?
Absolutely. For me, it starts with secure attachment as the base. So the
Mhm.
securely attached foundation. And secure attachment is okay, we can communicate well. We have a healthy way to navigate conflict. We both feel seen and heard and valued. We feel attuned, right? Like, when your partner is attuned to you, like they're tuned into you, they're able to acknowledge how you're feeling. So it's that secure base. And secure base then allows for freedom of, hey, I can go travel here, do this, whatever. And I know that we have our security. So I get to be who I am fully and grow as an individual while also growing this relationship.
That's so
That's
good.
fundamental.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned conflict and you mentioned that it's a good thing, right? You said conflict equals closeness. Are there some boundaries that you have to have around conflict, like non negotiables? Like you can't, because I'm sure there's people that are even listening, whether they might be in a bad relationship or with a narcissist or somebody that gaslights them. Like, are there some boundaries in order to have conflict in a healthy way?
I feel like I should go back and say healthy conflict is good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because there's conflict that damages a relationship, and that's absolutely not okay. Like there comes a point where if a relationship is draining your energy, it's causing you to feel worse about yourself, you're losing yourself, like all of those things, that's not okay. So some examples of boundaries could be we will not raise our voices at each other. We will not put each other down.
Mhm.
That one drives me crazy. Even
Yeah.
jokingly putting your partner down, I really don't think that that's what creates secure attachment. You know, we
Mhm.
really have to look out for that. Other boundaries could be if we need to talk about something, we talk about it within 3 days of an issue arising. We don't wait longer than 3 days. These are just some examples, but you would want to create this with your partner and just have an understanding of what does healthy conflict look like for us.
Yeah, that's so good, right? It could be within 3 days, but not immediately, right? Because sometimes people need to
No.
cool down if they're reactionary to
Yes.
a topic or something that's sensitive, And I do want to touch just because you brought up the word, and I know this isn't your primary focus of your practice and what you do and who you work with, but the word has been thrown up more in the last probably 2 years than I've ever heard, and I'm not super young, is the word narcissist, right? I feel like everybody that is with someone that's a jerk automatically thinks that they're a narcissist. And there is a difference between narcissistic tendencies, of course, and a narcissist. But let's say someone is trying to work through that. Either they're in a current relationship or they're trying to get out of that relationship because it's very difficult to get out of. Are there maybe some tips that you can talk about as opposed to that specific, the manipulation behind that personality type, and maybe some ways that people can take care of themselves or the first steps that they need to do in order to heal from it or get out of it?
I'm glad you asked this because I know this is near and dear to my heart as someone who went through this about 9 years ago myself. And podcasts and Instagram and all that really wasn't around back then. Like nobody was talking about it. And you're
Yeah.
right, it gets talked about a lot. So I think it's important to give good information around this topic. And I think the first thing I would say is you need to have a support system. If you're in that kind of relationship, their goal is going to be to isolate you, to keep you separate from people. So you have to realize, okay, I need to get some people in my corner. Even if it's the domestic violence hotline, I donate to them. They are a wonderful resource. Like they're great, but you need to have people that you can call. Get a therapist if you can. That's going to be so helpful to you. You just don't want to be isolated as you're going through this. And it's really important for you to realize that a narcissist will tear down your self worth as a way to manipulate you. So your brain has a lot of lies about your worthiness when you're in that kind of relationship. And those lies have a tendency to feel really true when you've been with somebody like that. So you have to realize that you can't always trust the thoughts that you have right now about yourself because they're not in reality if you've been in that kind of relationship. So once again, it's like you need outside support because you need to be able to see what's going on clearly. And it's really hard to do that when you're in it. So you
Oh,
need
yeah.
outside support.
Isn't that true? It's like anytime you're in something, you need that like 30,000 feet view to be able to look
Yeah.
at it and not have emotional attachment to it. And I think that connection is the key in so many ways, whether it's the hotline or a therapist or a coaching group or community. There's just so many ways that You need to get connected because we don't always see what's real until we have someone else's perspective, right? And so I think
Yeah.
it's an important thing for people to not be alone. And really, just anybody that wants to make a better relationship. I think just like anything, if you're around broke people, it's really hard to build wealth. Like if people are going out and spending more than they make, it's really hard for you to be diligent and invest because they have the new car and the fancy bag and the new watch or all these things. So when you're around people that are on the same path, it's easier to be successful. And I'd love to know your thought on this, but I feel like same thing with relationship. When you plug into a community of people that are also trying to do it, it makes your path easier.
Absolutely. That was one of the reasons why I felt so passionate about building a program and building a community, because I knew the power of doing it with other people. And I will say a lot of the people I work with didn't have any healthy relationship models, myself included. My dad and I have a great relationship now. He's been through 4 marriages. Like I just did not have great models for relationships. I always thought they ended, So I think there are those of us out there who have to go and intentionally seek out our models for relationships and think about, oh gosh, was there an acquaintance I met, or, maybe my friend's parents have a great relationship and I could learn from them. And once again, be a scientist and ask yourself, what does healthy, securely attached love look like in practice? And how can I start to model that?
Yeah, it's such good advice. And I love what you're doing. So I just want you to share with everyone. You mentioned the program that you have. I think it's so valuable for people that haven't done that work to really find out what they want their relationship to look like and has something from their past been keeping them from it. So you can tell us a little bit about it and where they can go to find out more.
It's been about 4 years now. It's the Empowered, Secure, Loved Relationship Program. And this is everything that you need to move from whatever your current attachment style is, maybe anxious, avoidant, or any trauma that you've had, if you're repeating patterns, wherever you are, it's everything you need to get to a securely attached place where you have a great relationship with yourself and you're bringing in that partner who you can build a lifelong relationship with. So,
Yeah, so good.
yeah. And then I have a podcast as well called Let's Get Vulnerable. I talk about attachment theory, all things relationship there. And I know we have a really special offer for your audience if they're interested in the program, if they're like ready to change their lives. We got a discount code just for you.
Yeah, and we'll link all that up in the show notes as far as the website, the code, all of that. Because I think like anyone that's really wanting to do the work on this, like what you've created is going to help and it already has, but it's going to help so many even more people with this because it's really important. I know it's mainly women, right? You work predominantly with women.
Yes.
Yeah, predominantly with women. And I think it's great. You've also got a book, Love Magnet, that they can find on Barnes & Noble and Amazon and all of the places. And so we'll definitely link all of that. And you can check her out on Instagram. And obviously all of the things are at drmorgancoaching.com.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome.
You got it.
Well, I appreciate this. I love what you're doing. I think that there's so much value in how it relates to business and wealth. And I think when we get this first thing right, it makes everything else easier. So until you create like your own, securely attached app so that people can stay off of all of the other apps that exist there, I think this is the best place for them to go. And we'll link all of this in the show notes for them. But thank you so much for what you do and how you show up and who you are. And I just love you as a female, as a woman, as an entrepreneur, and I love what you're doing. So thanks for spending this time with me.
Candy, thank you so much for having me. And I just want to shout you out and just say I so appreciate you and all that you give to so many people. And thank you for being an incredible example to all of us women out there building wealth. I just am so incredibly grateful to know you. So thank you so much.
Pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much.